Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And glad to have with us on our live line this morning, Corning Republican Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Assemblyman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. It's good to be with you again.
Assemblyman Palmesano, we had a lot of topics we wanted to cover today, but it goes without saying we had some local notables pass away over the weekend. Among them, Dr. Byron Collins, a longtime surgeon in Hornell. Your thoughts and memories?
Geez, first and foremost, my thoughts and prayers out to their families. Just two incredible individuals, a fixture in our community who've done so much. Dr. Collins actually was my doctor for different situations. He took my tonsils out, and he repaired a broken arm that I had when my tonsils came out when I was 3 years old. Repaired a broken arm I had in ninth grade, and he was always just very great, just a good man, good person. And I know my mother knew him very well for working at the hospital as a switchboard operator for years, and just a good person and just a stalwart in our community, certainly very instrumental in our fight to save St. James Hospital as well. So, yes, again, he will be surely missed, for absolutely. And, of course, Mr. Kohler, what a great...
Yeah, that was the other notable Mr. Kohler, who I believe you had in 11th grade for English, Assemblyman Palmesano.
I did have Mr. Kohler for English. He was a great teacher, just a great person, very kind, very helpful. And one thing I always remember so much about Mr. Kohler is the walks he'd go around in the neighborhood, and he'd always come by, our house on Erie Avenue, and I always get a chance to say hello to him. Just a good person, and just a great man, a great teacher. Certainly was involved and touched a lot of the lives of a lot of students that came through his path before his pathway over his years of teaching there. So certainly made an impact on myself, a number of my friends, a number of my fellow students, and just he will be surely missed. And again, just to Mr. Kohler's family, to Dr. Collins' family, I'm so sorry for your loss, and just you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers. But just two great people who made an impact in so many ways in the lives of people in our community.
Yes, and I would say on Don Kohler, he was one of those teachers that the students would like to go talk to outside of class. Even if you didn't have him, you might pop into class because he was such a friendly person.
He sure was. Yep, great man. Great.
Talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Assemblyman, lots going on in Albany. Let's start out with the Heroin Injection Center proposal. Has that passed yet in the Assembly?
No, thank God. But there is definitely some action by the sponsor to try to make that happen. I believe, if I remember correctly, I think the bill proposes to open up maybe four open heroin injection sites. First of all, one would be too many. But four? Give me a break. The answer to our heroin problem is not more heroin. The answer to our heroin problem is not putting a stamp of approval by the state of New York to tell people they can come in and get heroin. That doesn't help solve the heroin crisis, the growing heroin and opioid problem that we have in our communities across not just our region, across our state, and across our country. The answer to help address that issue is to put critical resources behind education, awareness, and treatment for those individuals who are seeking it out. We need to be compassionate with people who get caught up in heroin. We can't arrest our way out of this problem, but it's not compassionate to keep feeding them heroin. This is a deadly, lethal drug, and this just represents another terrible, misplaced priority by some of my colleagues in the state legislature, particularly from the downstate region.
Assemblyman, if I could stop you there, what is the reasoning, the rationale behind this, that about setting up a heroin injection center, that it's better to be able to give them Narcan and reverse the effects if it starts to get too dangerous? Is that what the left is thinking on this one?
I really don't know what the left is thinking. I think they try to justify it that way, also clean needles and things of that nature, but my goodness, all we're doing is feeding a habit, a dangerous, deadly habit. If they can't get it there, they're going to go someplace else. They're going to keep doing this, and it's not like they're just going to go there and get their drugs. They're going to keep getting the drugs wherever they can get it, whenever they can get it, because it's an addictive problem. It's not like they have scheduled appointments. They're just going to be able to. It's just amazing to me. This is just wrong. It sends a terrible message to our kids. For them to say, "Gee, the state of New York thinks it's okay to do drugs." Are you kidding me? I mean, it's just ridiculous, Brian. I don't understand it. I don't understand the mentality and the rationale behind some of my colleagues who propose some of these ridiculous policies. I know the mayor of Ithaca has talked about this as well. I think he was quoted as saying we need to think outside the box. Well, this is thinking way outside the box. This is like thinking out there like by Pluto, way outside our universe. This is wrong. We should not be endorsing this. We should not be supporting this, and this should hopefully be dead on arrival if this bill ever gets considered, because I certainly would never support such a thing, and I can't imagine other colleagues trying to support such a thing, and hopefully the governor would not be support such a thing. So this is what we're facing. These are just some of the terrible proposals we keep continuing to see out of Albany these days, and I know there's other ones we're going to be talking about momentarily.
The prison closings in Livingston County, thinking Sanye. What's the latest there, Assemblyman?
Well, I think that they when he put out the notice, it was a 90-day closure by September 1st. I haven't heard any changes to that plan. This, Brian, again, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. When they were saying some of the criteria for the prison closures were, age of facilities and things of that nature, and unused beds, and both of those things really what's going on there. When they made this announcement, they were utilizing 806 of the 874 beds in that facility. So it's not like there are tons of empty beds. They were near capacity and could continue to be made capacity. And then the other issue is that they've already invested millions upon millions of dollars for a new roofing. I think the new roof was like $5 million investment made, so to improve their infrastructure, in addition to millions of dollars in bringing water lines into the area for both Livingston Correctional Facility and Groveland. I think that was in the neighborhood of $8-9 million, but those are millions of dollars in critical infrastructure improvements. So why close down a facility that is at near capacity, and they made these investments? So again, this just goes to the crazy rationale of this administration and Governor Cuomo in closing down prisons. And what he does is, and this governor has bragged, Brian, about how many prisons he's closed over his tenure. But what he fails to do, continues to fail to do, is to take responsibility and ownership for the dangerous powder keg environment. These closures and other dangerous policies, failed policies that he's been pushing, has had and created in our correctional institutions. Brian, just over the past 5 years, inmate on staff assaults are up over 50%, and inmate assault staffs are up over 50%. Just over the past 2 weeks, we've had inmate assault on corrections officers at Elmira Correctional Facility and in Auburn. Serious injuries that happen to these people, multiple injuries in Auburn. One person hurt really bad over in Elmira. This is the type of environment that our corrections officers, our brave men and women who work in our staff and our correctional facilities have to face because of this. Not just because of the prison closures, but what they've caused in this environment. And before we even think about closing one prison, Brian, we should first be stopping and ending the dangerous practice of double bunking and double celling inmates and eliminate all these double bunks and double cells from our prisons. If we did that, there would not have to close any prisons. And they utilize this. So think about it. If you're in college and you're rooming with someone, it's kind of crowded as you're two college kids. Now think of a 50-year-old man in there with a 25-year-old murderer or rapist sharing a little cell. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. This is not this is not appropriate for a living environment, and all it does is it incites rising violence. And then,
Assemblyman, you're on the Corrections Committee. I had a question on that. You talk about people from different age groups getting put in prison cells together. When they put people together in a cell, in a jail situation or prison situation, do they put them together based on the similar crimes? You put killers with killers, you put thieves with thieves. Does it work that way or no?
Honestly, Brian, I wouldn't have the answer to that question. I don't know how they do it. All they know is that they shouldn't be two people in one cell or two people in a double bunked environment. Period. I mean, that's the failure. That's the dangerousness of this policy.
You're arguing that it should be single cell situations because of the dangers of violence against the prisoners from their cellmates.
Absolutely, it shouldn't be. Because first of all these people are pushing for more favorable conditions for inmates, they should be pushing to get rid of these double bunks and double cells. And what it does is, it's you could say it's inhumane for the inmates, but it leads to a dangerous environment for our brave men and women working in our correctional facilities, but also a dangerous environment for other inmates who are really just trying to go there and buy their time and pay their debt to society. But there are, unfortunately, a lot of criminals and inmates in prisons who don't care about that. They're going to be there for life. They're just going to keep trying to do whatever they can to better themselves, hurt whoever they can. And what the administration has done is continues to negotiate and take away important tools like the use of special housing units in our correctional facilities, which is sometimes referred to as solitary confinement. And first of all, for the audience, it's not solitary confinement. Solitary confinement has no contact with the outside, does not get to go outside. These individuals do get outdoor recreation time. They do see people come by their cells. I've walked through several correctional facilities. There's administration, corrections officers come through hourly. They have clergy, they have mental health people come by, librarians come by, that they get to talk to and see on a regular basis. So it's not solitary confinement. And this is done to protect individuals. So now there are people that want to try to limit the amount of time someone can spend in special housing units to 15 days. Let me tell you, if they do that, these people will go and can attack and kill and maim a corrections officer or a staff member or another inmate and only go in for 15 days. They can do that with their eyes closed. You can't take these disciplinary tools away from our corrections officers who have a dangerous job, and it's their role to make sure, first, hopefully they're safe, and then other inmates are safe. But there are people in our facilities, dangerous inmates, who don't care about that. All they want to do is hurt and take control and scare people, and you take these tools away, like the use of special housing units to limit the time and the crime for what it's used for. And Albany always rejects, they overturn sentencing for time in special housing units when they don't know, they're not there, they don't see the conditions of the prison, just because they're trying to lessen the time. And it's an environment that's more conducive and more supportive of murderers and rapists than it is of the law enforcement that are working behind these dangerous walls and these dangerous facilities. And it's, more policies favoring the criminal inmate than our brave law enforcement and also the crime victims' families because of some of these policies you see coming out of Albany.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about a number of issues, including the Farm Bill, which seeks to unionize family farms in upstate. Stay with us.
The Canisteo Police Club and the Maple City Police Club have teamed up to host an inaugural Smoke in the Valley event to be held on Saturday, July 27th at the Canisteo American Legion. It'll include a large barbecue competition, tastings from several local breweries, wineries, and cideries, over 10 hours of live music, cornhole and horseshoe tournaments, kids' activities, and lots of food and drinks throughout the day. Tickets available now from any Hornell or Canisteo Police Club member, or visit this website, canisteopd.com, and click on Police Club.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. Rob, how's it looking? A little rainy today?
A little rainy today, Brian. We had a gorgeous weekend across the southern tier, unfortunately, as we head back to work, though I guess the timing's good. We've got a little bit of rainfall. It's working its way up from the south and east into the southern tier from northern Pennsylvania. We'll see some periods of rain today. Temperatures are probably going to be about 70 to 75. Looks like we're breezy as well. Sunrise earlier today was at 5:33. The sun will set tonight at 8:46. Got 15 hours and 13 minutes of daylight. Days will get longer for about another week or so, and then we'll start seeing them get a little bit shorter as we head into late June. Tonight, Brian, the rain's going to come to an end during the evening in the form of some showers and maybe a thunderstorm. It'll be breezy. Overnight lows near 55. Tomorrow, high pressure will build in with lots of sunshine. It's going to be breezy, and it turns cooler. Highs tomorrow only 65 to 70. Tomorrow night clear and cool, 45 to 50. We've got sun in the forecast for the day on Wednesday, milder, 70 to 75. Another round of rain will head our way on Thursday.
Thanks, Rob. Back to Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Assemblyman, late last week I got an email from Steuben County Democratic Chairman Sean Hogan. Hogan sent in the email that he supports the Democratic Rural Conference of New York State in opposing the Farm Bill. Now, this was an interesting quote from the Democratic Rural Conference of New York State. It says, quote, California is often mentioned as a state that implemented legislation similar to the New York State Farm Bill, but farmers in California don't have to deal with the weather conditions that can make agriculture so time-sensitive in rural New York. And it says New York farms are also smaller and many are family-owned.
first of all, I'm glad to see that they put out that statement, but and I understand. And Sean knows, he's from a rural area. He sees that. He sees what's going on in our community. Let me tell you, though, Brian, this bill that's pending before the legislature is extremely dangerous and will destroy the family farm in New York State. But I'm not 100% sure, but I think that statement of the Rural Conference also said that they supported the collective bargaining and unionizing of farm workers, which there was a Supreme Court decision that just ruled on that. Hopefully that's appealed. That alone will be a very dangerous precedent and would help destroy the family farm from this perspective. And I'll go through the points. First of all, for the audience, what we need to know is there was a study that by Farm Credit East back a couple years ago when they were debating the minimum wage increase. And at that time, it said farm labor costs as a percentage of net farm income in the country was 36%. That's the country. But farm labor costs as a percentage of net farm income in New York State was 63%. So listening to those numbers right there, New York farmers are already at a competitive disadvantage to their counterparts in other neighboring states, lower-cost states. This bill, if enacted, will increase farm labor costs by $300 million annually, or a 20% increase, and will result in a compounding decrease and drop in net farm income by 23%. And I know the statement said a lot of farms are family-owned farms. Well, not just a lot. 98% of the farms, Brian, in New York State are family-owned farms. My colleagues in New York City often want to talk about, getting their milk and their food and their products and vegetables at a cheap price, but they have no idea some of these policies and the ramifications of these policies they're putting on the table to advance. So let's talk about the unionization. Think about if a couple of workers, disgruntled workers, want to hold up when harvest time is coming. You have to be right out in the field. If they want to try to put a hindrance to the ownership and try to hold a gun to their head, they could say we're going to strike. Well, that could devastate and destroy a family farm in themselves. If a cow isn't milked within a couple of days, that could kill the cow off and not being able to produce anymore. Mandatory overtime for over 8 hours a day. I mean, they're not even trying to negotiate over a period of hours in a week rather than 8 hours in a day, because sometimes when it's harvest time, all hands on deck approach. And I'm just very scared of this legislation and this collective bargaining thing. It should not happen. It should not be a part of this package. And all I want to say to my colleagues out there is, listen, if there are no farms, there is no food. If there are no farms, there are no farm workers. This is something that's dangerous. It will impact all of us in a negative way, because think about it. If all our farms go out of business, it's not just the number one industry in our region. It's the number one industry in our state. So then people would have to go out of state for their products, which is going to increase cost dramatically on the consumer. And it's not going to be as fresh as having it right here in your backyard. It's just dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. So I'm glad the Democratic conference is saying that, but they should not be supporting the unionization concept as well, which I believe their statement did. This would be dangerous. So hopefully my colleagues in upstate New York, whether they're from wherever they may be, in the Assembly and the Senate. The other problem, Brian, that's really aggravating to this is the listeners. Senator O'Meara and I wrote a letter to the Speaker and the Majority Leader, the two respective labor chairs and agriculture chairs, demanding public hearings on this issue, something that's going to impact the number one industry in our state and their livelihoods. So we pushed that, but no response back. And the Senate then the Senate Republican Conference had a press conference pushing the issue as a group. The Senate had 3 hearings, and we called for hearings all around the state and every agricultural region, from the Finger Lakes to western New York to the southern tier to North Country, Long Island, Hudson Valley, all of those areas. Well, the Senate had 3 of them, not nearly enough, and the Assembly has continued to refuse to have a hearing. What an insult to the farmers and the agricultural community in our area to not be able to do that. Our Assembly Republican Conference did a follow-up letter to the leaders, again, to the Assembly, saying you should need to have a hearing. To advance legislation like this would be an insult to our family communities and be devastating. And to think that this bill is being introduced by a New York City representative, probably hasn't been on a farm, hasn't talked to a farmer. They need to be able to come have some input from our agricultural community so they can show how damaging this will be. And it's just aggravating to me that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, particularly from New York City, are trying to advance this legislation, which would actually destroy the family farm in New York State. So again, I will say this very clearly. If there are no farms, there is no food. If there are no farms, there are no farm workers. So I'm hopeful that people continue to speak out and this bill does not get advanced, because if it does, we're all in trouble.
Assemblyman Palmesano, down to the last 3 minutes, wanted to cover your thoughts on driver's licenses for the undocumented or illegals, whatever you want to call them.
Right. I think it's a terrible idea, Brian. We had this fight before, back in 2007 under Elliott Spitzer, and it was defeated. But the legislature with the Democratic majority in the Assembly and the Senate seem to keep pushing this issue. It's my understanding we might be taking up this legislation in the Assembly this week. There seems to be some uncertainty in the Senate side because you have a lot of the Long Island lawmakers who live in the suburban areas that are very concerned about what this might mean to their reelection campaigns, and I hope they better be concerned, because the public does not support this, and to think that they're going around to try to advance this legislation, you're giving your stamp of approval. Unfortunately, these people are here illegally. Yes, if we want to try to look at this issue, we have to look at immigration from a federal perspective. But these are individuals who are here illegally. I talked to the Board of Elections. This could lead to rampant voter fraud because you have a New York State ID, a license. That's an official document that can show. They can't question you when you register to vote if you're an illegal citizen or not. If they see, especially if they see an ID, you can't question them and ask them if they're here illegally. So who's to stop someone from registering to vote? And I think this is all the part of the immigration problem you see going on in the state. Some of the majority parties, some of the Democrats at the presidential level want more individuals coming into the state who can register to vote, and they're coming in illegally. We support legal immigration, but we need to have some rule of law to protect our society. You can't just have the gates wide open so people can just walk in. You need to have a legal immigration system, and we can't continue to support and condone illegal immigration by doing policies that endorse it.
With that, we have to leave it. Assemblyman Phil Palmesano, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. Always good to be with you.